drop, and what you see is what you get. And that process of building a website is actually quite streamlined in today's day and age. It's also quite cost effective, but it creates a whole other series of concerns building a website versus putting together something like this. Now, I'm not looking around, I'm not that much older than you, even though I've got a graying beard and I'm not quite jaded yet. But when I grew up, this was what we needed. But your website arguably could be a much larger piece of real estate, could be much more comprehensive if you want it to be than something like a printed portfolio or a one sheet or a bunch of, printed samples of your work, which makes it even more important to realize that it is advisable for your edit of your portfolio to be short and sweet with every page and every project fully fleshed out, a quote unquote superstar, than to risk a client skipping over something altogether. Okay. The right answer is to consider the types of clients that you want to work for, would like to work for, how much they realistically want to see in whatever it is that you're doing. You might decide that a little bit of diversification is okay. You might decide that working across a number of different industries is okay, depending on what your pursuits are. But of course, you must curate your thoughts entirely for the job that you want. That second dimension is also what is going to allow you to produce something that helps you facilitate a goal versus creating art or marketing material or words on a page for the sake of creating. And I think the right answer, as we're going to uncover, if you're thinking about all of these things in the way that I'm describing, is to produce something that is actually right for you based on you understanding what that means and nothing more. It's easy to say. It's very, very hard to do because it requires you to take a critical look at yourself, to ask the hard questions, to really plan a direction and a goal and stick to it and not compare yourself to others, not compare yourself to others' curated presentations of themselves on things like social media or what your classmates are doing or what your parents want you to do or what your friends think you should be doing. Then it's about them and it's not about you. It's a lot tougher of a conversation than I think most people think it is in order to do this right. It is the number one thing that I see in create people wanting to work in their creative business is that it's just a collection of stuff rather than a focused effort at achieving a goal. And one of the ways that we can put a filter around this, I think, is to think a little bit laterally about one very, very important consideration. Most people tend to think about job seeking as a very linear thing. And same with finding clients is a very linear thing. I have to make the introductions to some specific group of people who hopefully see my resume and my portfolio and it resonates with them. Well, it's not exactly the way that it works if you want to be successful. And I'm all about working smarter and not harder. And I'm absolutely, when I look at all of you right now, I don't think any of you would argue with me if I said, do you want to bypass the line? That big pile of horrendous shit resumes sitting on somebody's desk? Do you want to bypass that line? Well, you need to understand how things actually work, which is also related to the your infill strategy or your strategy to get your work in front of somebody who actually makes the calls. So if I were to ask you, there's no, well, there is a specific answer I'm looking for, but who do you want to see your portfolio? What specific person or group of people or part of the hierarchy do you actually want to see your portfolio? Throw some people's names or job titles out. And I could tell you there's only one answer, but it involves you thinking very sideways about how to answer that. Who do you want to see your portfolio? Ah, the good old hiring manager. Ugh, hiring manager is always the absolute last person on my list that you want to see your portfolio. Who else? I'm sorry I'm making you think on a Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my friends. Management. Okay, getting closer. What kind of management? The leader of the project. Okay, maybe. Top management. Lily, you're getting closer. Johanna, you're getting closer. Maybe. The boss. Okay. Uh, Stakeholders. Okay, the boss is probably the closest answer yet. Okay, but I don't want to know. Okay, the business owner. Okay, now we're getting really close. Why do you want the business owner or the boss, and I'm putting those in air quotes, to be the people that you see that sees your portfolio or resume? Why? What is it that they can do that someone else can't do? I would argue that they absolutely can't understand it necessarily. Lily, they can make decisions or they can veto everyone's decisions, but what does that mean that they have access to that others don't? They are the decision makers because they have access to what? They have access to the money. Right. They're paying the salary. They're making the decisions. And then let me ask you this. What does someone who works in HR know about marketing? If they knew anything about marketing, they would be working in marketing, not HR, right? It's like the most obvious answer, but it's always the answer that most people get completely wrong. Is that the people who are doing the interviews and the people that are doing the hiring, and even your creative and art directors, if that's who you're dealing with in that world, they're not the ones who make the decisions. Those are the ones who advise somebody who has the ability to pull the trigger. Those are the people that have access to the money. Now, if you ever want to understand why it's laborious for most people to find or get a job or get someone to even look at their portfolios, because they're focusing their efforts on the wrong thing. You don't need to appease a hiring manager. You don't need to appease a creative director. What you have to do is work to understand who makes the decisions and why they make those decisions and what gives them the ability to make those decisions, and then go after them. Those are the people who you really want to see your portfolio. Those are the people who you need to spend the time to figure out ways and means to get it in front of them. And that means that instead of black holing your resume and cover letter and trying to get your portfolio in front of people through a million different steps, the better way to do it is to figure out who these people are and bypass the line. And heaven forbid, that might mean you have to do some research. It certainly might mean, hey, you got to pick up your phone and get a hold of somebody instead of sending somebody an email or applying to a job on LinkedIn. Because the people who really value your portfolio are the people who make the decisions about where the money gets spent. Those are the people that you should be trying to understand. Those are the people who you should try to understand because it influences the kind of work and thought process that you put into your portfolio. Those other positions exist to gatekeep people from interacting with those people. And I know because I've been on all sides of that equation before. Let me ask you a different question. And I appreciate all your thoughts there. You'd be surprised at how many people, how many classes of this I've taught who have no idea what I'm trying to get at. So well done at that lateral thinking. Who is the least important group of people that might see your portfolio? Who do you think the least important group of people is? And people that might actually hold the most sway over you? Getting close. This is still part of that same question is who sees your portfolio? Who do you want to see it? And who actually probably holds the most influence over you, but is whose opinion is the absolute least valuable? Lily, again with the win. Your friends, your family, they know even less about marketing and media than the HR does, but they're probably the group of people that you want to impress the most. Unfortunately, you have to take all of those opinions and throw them out the window. They're the ones that are going to hold the most sway over you, and you're very tempted to design things that pass, ATS, computer rules to get in front of, HR, and then 16 interviews, and it's mitigated by what your friends think of your work, and your parents' comment on how good or how bad it is. All of that is absolutely meaningless. The only people that matter are the people that make the decisions. And if you're not sure what that means to as an influence on your portfolio, then just find somebody who works in the industry that you want to have, pick up the phone and ask them for some of their time to pick their brain about what that actually means. Joanna, where are you? I'm looking on my screen for you.
Hi.
Hey, there
Hi,
you are.
Jeremy. Nice to
Hey,
meet you.
likewise, likewise.
I have a question because, well, I know that the portfolio is very important
Yeah.
in our industry,
Hmm.
but I would like to understand how is the way about the um how the business hire you, because I know that the portfolio is very important because you sell your service, or what do you do? But after that, you pass to another process about like probably show me what do you do, show me how can you design how to do that, because I mean, like, probably you can sell yourself in the portfolio, but sometimes companies, serious companies,
Hmm.
also ask you for other step. So you pass with your portfolio to one step. So the second step, to hire you, I select a small group of people to who are gonna design it. I don't know, in an hour, 2 hours.
Oh,
I
you
give you
mean
a
like they're going to
topic.
ask you to as like a potential test
Yes,
or demonstration?
yes.
It's
So
not
because it's
it's not
important to,
uncommon.
yeah, no, it's not uncommon here. So they hire you because about the portfolio, about what do you do in your experience past also.
Okay, if I'm understanding what you're asking, Johanna, you're asking in the hiring process, is it normal to get candidates to demonstrate their abilities to do what they say they're they're going to do? Is that sort of what you're asking?
Could you please explain me again? I didn't understand.
Yeah, no problem. Are you asking that in an interview process or in a hiring process, is it normal for you to have to demonstrate your ability once they get past your portfolio? Is that sort of what you're asking?
Yes, I mean like anyone can make it look good on paper. That's my question. It's like
Oh, okay. Like they're
yes,
gonna
one
make sure
paper
that
everything looks
you're gonna make
great
sure,
and you are going to be
right.
higher about that
You're
because
gonna make
I
sure that you're not bullshitting them, is what you're saying.
exactly.
Right.
Sorry. That's why.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, yes, I have an answer for that and a suggestion that I'm going to make to everybody once we get to start looking at your portfolios. I can try to answer it for you now, Johanna. Um, it is certainly possible that you might be asked for a test of competency in the application process. That's certainly why I would always recommend to just try to bypass the line completely and go to the people that make the decisions instead of people that are making you jump through hoops for reasons unknown. But if you want to hedge that bet and not have to demonstrate your abilities on the fly in a completely unreasonable test of skill, the best practice would be to ensure that you showcase as many behind the scenes and process elements of how you conduct your craft in your portfolio. And it is obviously one of the things that is very challenging to do depending on what it is that you are actually producing. But the missing link is often going to be showcasing, you know, part of your process, things that happen behind the scenes, how you got from an idea to a concept to a finished product. And the reason that that's important, Johanna, and everybody listening here is that they might not like your work, or it might not be super relevant to whatever it is that they're doing, but they will see that you understand the process behind creating and finishing something. So the more that you can incorporate that right off the rip, the more likely it is that you're not going to have to deal with, situations that you're describing, Johanna, if that makes sense to you. And we're literally about, after the break, that's what we're talking about.
Yes, and sorry about that. Another question is like, what happened with
Why are you sorry?
the?
Don't be sorry.
No, okay, yes, I know. I mean, like, what happened with the other people who are doing marketing and they didn't have a portfolio. They never work in marketing. They don't have like something to show. So that would be a good advice on you if you can tell us, because I'm not sure my colleagues, but I would like to understand
You're
the
like,
two
how do you
ways.
work in
Yeah,
marketing
how
without
can
a
I work in a
portfolio?
portfolio even if I didn't work in marketing? And how can we sell about that? I know probably if I have skills in create in a marketing, in a digital marketing, any type of certificate that we are going to get. Probably I have some
Right. So
skills.
if you're
I'm
right.
confident of that, but I don't have any portfolio.
Yeah, so I actually I did sort of mention that already, but we are going to talk about that in a little bit more focused detail. Is that, I mean, everyone is arguably in the same boat unless you have already worked in marketing in the past. You're wondering what's going in your portfolio if you have never worked in marketing. Well, this is where you're at a huge advantage. This is the entire preface of what I was just talking about for our introduction, was that if you understand what you are about and what you're capable of doing and who you want to do it for to achieve a specific result in a specific direction, well, then you have to just go and produce that work. You decide what goes into your portfolio. If that means you're creating a project out of thin air, where let's say you're writing a marketing strategy for a fictitious sushi restaurant in downtown Winnipeg. Well, if you want to work in the restaurant business or in the food and beverage business, that might be something that you would consider. You're making up the work. It is called spec work, where you determine the specifications and the focus of whatever it is that you want to produce, precisely because you don't have any real world work. And the reason that this is the absolute way to go is because, first of all, if you're working for somebody already, you may not actually have permission to include that work in your portfolio. Chances are you'll probably get it at some point. But that, and number two, you're always going to be restricted by the brief and the requirements of said project. You're not going to have the opportunity to say, well, you know, here's how I would have done it. But you have that opportunity right now when you're creating your portfolio in the very first instance. This is why you can't sit down and make a portfolio of just a bunch of stuff that showcases your skills and have it be effective for you. You have to understand what it is that you want to do, what your goals are, how it relates to you, your growth as a professional, and be able to figure out the answer to that question, Johanna. If I asked you, what is it that you want to do? Who do you want to work for? If I could snap my fingers for you, my dear, and say, I'm going to get you your dream job tomorrow. Well, what does that look like? You don't have to answer it. But if the answer was, for argument's sake, you wanted to work for Apple Computers and you were a marketing specialist, well, I would be writing case studies of spec work that I created of my own design to roll out, you know, potentially 4 new products for them. What does that look like? What kind of assets do they need? Where would the media be purchased? What kind of wording and copywriting and lexicon would need to be used? How does it get deployed? What are the metrics for success? These are things that you get to decide of your own choosing. That's how you get work in a portfolio that is designed specifically to help you achieve your goals and aspirations moving forward. Okay. And Yukti, you can. That's a great question. I get asked this all the time. I mean, you got to understand that in your program, you're in a sort of a multi-course, multi-engagement program, and I only got you for 6 hours. I don't necessarily know what it is that you produced in other uh, courses in that program. But if you're asking the question, my response to you would be maybe. And I say maybe include work that you've already done, or if you've done work in the past, only if it's going to help you achieve whatever goals you're setting. You're putting the cart before the horse. The first thing that I started off, and these are all great questions, is that if you don't know yourself, then your portfolio ends up becoming a collection of work that isn't designed to achieve any specific results. Then you're going to wonder why you did all this work and put in all this time and you're not getting the jobs that you want or the opportunities that you want. It's because it's not focused on anything. It doesn't mean anything to anybody specifically. It's not a bad thing, but it is what it is. It's art, marketing case studies, work for the sake of work that is not going to help you achieve your goals. And that's why I suggested, what is it you want to do? Who do you want to work for? Who do you want to work with? What are your goals? Then we can figure out what goes in there. And most importantly, how to associate things that you do with places or companies or clients or entities that you want to work with. Now, I'm really happy to see these questions an hour and 10 minutes into the session, but I promise you this. Our second session is designed to address this specifically, how to get that notion out of your head and into reality so that you can create a targeted group of work that is designed to achieve a very specific result instead of it being a collection of stuff that you've done in the past, which isn't necessarily going to help you out with anything. So Yukti, if the work that you've done in your studies at the university are things that are directly related to the job opportunities that you want to explore or the clients that you want to pick up, then absolutely include them in your portfolio. But if they're not, then you can't tell me that it's the best sort of representation of your work. It's probably not the most current. And you certainly can't tell me that it's designed to achieve a specific result for you. So I would question why you would want that in your portfolio at all, if that makes sense. Okay. Well, why don't we do this? I'm just looking at the time and I want to sort of pivot into the conversation about showing you some stuff and looking at some portfolios and giving you some advice of to how to start thinking about your Yukti, you don't have to you don't have to thank me, my dear. That's what I'm here for. It's my pleasure. Um, what I want to do is I want to transition our conversation from like an intro spiel to like us looking at real concrete examples of what makes a good portfolio, and we can examine these and look through them, and you'll find that a lot of them, regardless of focus, have several things that are in common, but are also missing several things that are in common with each other. And of course, if I can just backtrack for 1 second and maybe assuage some of your thoughts and questions that you're having. I'm not going to give you knowledge without backing up any claims that I'm making, right? The statement about what goes into your portfolio and how to tailor that to your specific goals and wishes and aspirations, we're going to create a plan of attack and showcase how to go and do that in real time together over the course of our time together. Okay. It's just not going to happen today. It's going to happen next week. Okay. So why don't we do this? Let's take 15 minutes, get a glass of water, get some more coffee, get some fresh air, take your pet duck out for a walk, whatever it is, and we'll reconvene at I guess at 20 to 3. I'm an hour ahead of you, so it's 2:25 Winnipeg time. Come on back at 2:40 and we'll continue. Does that sound fair? Well, welcome back, my friends, my new friends. Hope you had a chance to get up and move around a little bit, shake it off, get some refreshment. In my case, it's more coffee. As long as you don't tell anybody, this one is decaf. I know it's imposter coffee, but hey, got to do what I got to do. But let's get settled back in here for the back half of session number 1 today. I think before we take a look at some of these portfolios that I want to look at with you and discuss, um, I think we need to be on the same page about one thing. And at the end of the day, regardless of your your focus and your discipline that you're going to pursue, in order to create your portfolio effectively, and even to some degree like your own craft, it is almost impossible to do it without sort of thinking like a creative and understanding some of the roles and responsibilities that we have to take on in order to do what we have to do. And of course, the roles and responsibilities can certainly vary depending on the specific job, the industry, and the organization. But I think there are a lot of commonalities between all disciplines in this business of art that are relevant to the pursuit of developing any sort of creative type portfolio. And, in addition to the things that you already do that you're aware of, I think all of you could choose to incorporate some level of discussion and knowledge and sort of familiarity with the people that you're job seeking with, or your clients, that you also understand and deal with all of these things as well, whether you realize it or not. on top of a new skill that you may be developing, and that is, building a modern website, building a modern portfolio. And firstly, one of the things that we do, regardless of the discipline that we're in, is, we are arguably specialists in conceptualization and design of things. Especially in the world of marketing and strategy development. You're responsible for developing these concepts. You're responsible for developing these creative concepts as well and expressing them in some kind of form of visual communication. We often are tasked with creating visually appealing designs for various types of media. Could be for print, it could be for digital, it could be for social media. That's a huge, huge part of what we do. And if that's the case, then it probably makes sense that at some level you have some degree of graphic, proficiency in modern graphic design tools. Specifically the applications that are in the Adobe family of software, Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, and relevant tools, as well as, perhaps, Word and Excel, and dare I even say the word that is banned in any of my design classes, Canva. That's certainly valid tools for you to have in today's day and age, which means that you're also fluent and responsible for things like layout and composition. If you're presenting a marketing strategy or an annual report, or any design things to your clients, well, that is going to be key in your success. And especially when it comes to setting the mood and character and vibe of your own portfolio and your own branding, we're responsible for design layouts for all kinds of things, which also means, whether you realize it or not, you're probably fairly knowledgeable, or at least have a decent understanding of the principles of typography. At the very base level, you understand what types of fonts and typefaces can make something look modern, or look expensive, or look fun, or spacious, or techie, or childlike. Those are all important skills and to have, especially when we're about to dive into creating a look and feel for marketing ourselves. Which also means that you probably have some basic understanding of color theory. I mean, we all have a favorite color. We all understand that red is the color of passion and blue is the color of being cool, calm, and collective. Green is the color of money. I mean, like that should play into, even subliminally, the work that you produce, especially in your portfolio. And that will tie directly into the creation and implementation of your branding. Well, remember, you're the product that your portfolio is designed to market. You can't call yourself a marketing specialist or a media specialist if you're unable to market yourself. So, being able to develop and maintain those consistent branding elements across all of your materials, whether it's your website, your business card, your social media channels, your LinkedIn page, your cover letter, your resume, your one sheet, all of those things are absolutely key so that we can tie in one thing to another across everything that we do. Now, in the case of job seekers, a creative's responsibility is also being communicative and being able to work with both a team or your clients. And it sort of goes as, something that is understood, but we are directly responsible for facilitating these kinds of things, collaborating with clients, art directors, other team members to understand the requirements of something and incorporate their feedback, which at the end of the day means that you are arguably really, really good at problem solving. Addressing any kind of challenges that come up and deal with them with innovative and timely solutions is really the hallmark of what makes a creative professional, uh, you know, good at what they do. And on a, you know, related side note, when people ask me what I do for a living, other than being a professor, my answer is usually that I come up with last minute solutions to impossible problems created by other people. And whether that is dealing with them in terms of media strategy or marketing strategy, graphic design or advertising or business process, that is what I focus all of my efforts on. This is my responsibility to be able to do that. Now, that also involves you at some point needing some level of understanding about print production and basic principles of digital graphic design. I mean, at some point when you're building your portfolio, you're going to have to take these things into consideration, whether you have experience with them or not. And this is sort of, you're now sort of taking on the role of both being a creative and a graphic designer and a marketer and a advertising and communication specialist. All of this to me means that part of our responsibility, regardless of discipline, if we're going to make a real big go at this, is that we have to stay up on our current trends. We have to have a finger on the pulse of what is popular in the modern day zeitgeist in terms of look and feel and vibe. We don't want to create a portfolio or work that looks like it's straight out of 1998 MySpace. I don't even know if any of you were alive when MySpace was a thing. Anybody? Anybody have a MySpace account? Well, I'm really dating myself here. But all of this sort of means that proper time management skills are a huge part of what is going to make your go at this super successful. And your ability to turn all of this stuff into a finished product is going to be on display. It is important for you to start thinking like a creative, start to think like a graphic designer, regardless of your discipline, because it is going to, at the end of the day, be something that absolutely helps you. Now, before we take a look at a few of these amazing portfolios that I want to show you and have a discussion with and get your feedback on, I think what I can do is I can sort of summarize what we've been talking about thus far in a very, very succinct fashion, uh, with sort of 10 best tips I can give you to frame how all of this rolls out for all of us here. We live and die by the quality of our end result of our portfolio. It has to sum up your work. It has to be the first port of call for someone looking to hire or commission you. It needs to show the breadth of your output. It needs to show your skills and experience and how you generate and execute ideas. It needs to showcase your entire process. It needs to get people excited, informed. When it's done well, it should both impress and surprise the viewer. It should demonstrate how you and your work are going to be an invaluable asset to them. And in order to be able to do that, whether it's on a full-time basis, a freelance basis, a contractual basis, on a mercenary business, I think it needs to deal with at least these 10 things, if not more. Okay, the first is probably the most important, and that is make it all killer and no filler. I'm not a fan of seeing work that is in a portfolio simply for the sake of it being there. If you do put stuff in there that is just for the sake of being there and it is not necessarily relevant to your goals and aspirations, you should look at it as a potential hindrance. And you can probably bet that someone who is really tack sharp in interviewing you or having a conversation about your abilities is going to ask you why that particular piece or pieces are there in your portfolio if they are not completely relevant to your journey or your outcomes that you want to achieve. And it should be common sense to sort of make it all really, really good, current, relevant work, but you'd be surprised at how often that advice is not followed. If you're not 100% happy with something, whether it is current or previous work, don't put it in there. You are only ever as good as the last thing that you did. In fact, you're probably only as good as the first thing someone sees in your portfolio. And I get it. It's going to be very, very hard for you to self-edit this. But you're going to have to be quite ruthless when you're thinking about assembling this to ensure that the work that you're putting in there is up to scratch and of a standard that you can stand by. Okay? Now, one way to deal with this is to start and end with key pieces. And I'm going to quantify the end part in a moment here. When I get to your portfolio, I want it to feel substantive. Now, what could that be? It could be a clarifying statement. It could be an elevator pitch. It could be you having some sort of inspirational quote. It could be a totally badass, professionally captured photograph of you. It could be a composition of your work sliding across the page. But whatever it is, that first impression is going to set the tone for how the rest of the conversation and your relevant levels of success or unsuccessfulness is going to happen. So start strong, hit them hard with something that captures their attention. As far as ending with key pieces, the one thing that we're going to see in a few of these portfolios that we're about to look at is the utter lack of any sort of call to action, right? I'm here. Now what do you want me to do? If you're not spelling out for them what it is that you want to have happen when someone is looking at your portfolio. And that could be anything. Sign up for my newsletter. Let them know that you're available for freelancing, or that you're currently looking for a job, or that you want them to fill out your contact form to learn more. Then what's the point of having anyone go there? It is probably the number one thing that I see that most portfolios are lacking is some way to seal the deal, a call to action, a CTA. Make sure you have one in there in any way that you can. And of course, leave them wanting more. And this is a bit of a baited statement, but it is probably one of the most important things to do is to try to structure it where you're not revealing all of your cards all at once. You want to leave them wanting a little bit more. There's something a little bit about mystery and intrigue, and you don't necessarily want to overdo it in one area or another of your portfolio. But one thing to consider is this, is that a great strategy is to have something finished that could go in your portfolio, but you don't put it there. So that when you show up to a client meeting or a job interview, the first thing that you could say to them is, oh, hey, listen, I have this that I would love to show and discuss with you. Have something ready to go, uh, you know, because you don't want to show up to a meeting or a conversation with nothing left to talk about. Okay. Now, obviously, go digital. There is simply zero excuse in today's day and age for not putting your best foot forward with a well-designed, well thought out, well composed, and functional online web presence to act as your primary port of call for your portfolio. You do not need to know how to code anything in order to build a proper website. I'm going to demonstrate that for you in our next session. But you should take advantage of how websites are built in the modern age. Places like Squarespace, Adobe Portfolio, WordPress, even if you're selling something like using a platform like Shopify, those are all amazingly powerful tools that offer bundled service pricing where everything is managed under one roof, including building your website, writing all of the words on the page, and being able to upload and include all of the work that you've created. There's very, very little learning curve involved. And if there's something that you don't know how to do from a technical process, all of these platforms now, to varying degrees, have knowledge bases that will walk you through the process of how to do something in order to build their website. There's both written step-by-step instructions and there's video instructions that can walk you through the process. And we'll take a look at these next week as well. One of the more challenging things to do And this is a problem that I see far more in in strict graphic design circles, not necessarily in marketing and advertising circles, but in graphic design, is let your work speak for itself. However you choose to present whatever it is that you're showing, you're going to be tempted to over embellish things. You're going to be tempted to want to throw all of your skills at it because you think that it's going to make it look better or be demonstrative of your capabilities. Don't. Think about where, some of the most effective ways of presenting other forms of work, going to a museum, going to an art gallery, reading a book. They're often presented very minimalistically. You go to an art gallery, more than likely, it's the painting or the picture hanging on a blank, empty wall of one single solid color. This is to allow you to focus on the work, right? So allow the work to do the talking for your presentation of your portfolio. Make it easy for clients to possibly see your work in a enlarged format. And even if that means clicking on an image or a PDF or something to blow it up and make it larger, it's something that you absolutely need to consider being able to do in your presentation. And of course, I've said this many, many times already today. Curate for the job that you want. And this is both in execution and in thought process in regarding to figuring out the answer to the next thing, number 7 on this list. If you said to me, Jeremy, I'm really interested in automotive marketing, I'd be like, great. I love automotive marketing. It's tons of fun. I've done a ton of work in it. Well, make sure that the bulk of your portfolio is geared towards automotive marketing. Now, it's a very obtuse example because I mean, an automotive marketer, an automotive business whose sole job is to sell cars, probably isn't going to be interested in a social media strategy for, I don't know, an environmental sustainability company, or how you would roll out the media and marketing for a an indoor golf simulator. They're only going to be interested in how you can help them sell cars. So it might be tempting for you to showcase something that you're particularly proud of, but if it's not relevant to the people that you are showing it to, you may be unintentionally shooting yourself in the foot. Now, the answer to dealing with all of this, as we've talked about, as Johanna asked earlier, is creating self-initiated work, okay, aka spec work. And I've lost count of the amount of times that I've heard fellow creatives state how important self-initiated work is to their practice. Potential employers are hugely interested in seeing you flex your creative muscles in your respective disciplines and express your individual voice in creating the materials that you are creating, to the point where, as Johanna has correctly stated, it might even be a requirement for the interviewing or onboarding process. It's not always the case, but it certainly is more and more common. Now, including self-initiated work that you figure out the specifications and content and scope and focus for, it helps the employer or client see where your passions lie and the kind of work that you would choose to do if you were not restricted by any sort of brief or any guardrails. Unless you're at this sort of senior art director or creative director or marketing director level, it's kind of hard to tell, in many instances, how integral of a role you played with something, especially in the creation of a large project, or whether or not you were working to strict guidelines or strict timelines or strict technical or budgetary restrictions. When you call all the shots, especially in the first instance, you're putting everything into the work that you're showcasing. And yeah, if you decide that you want to come up with a new marketing strategy or a comm strategy or new design or print materials for someone like Porsche as a series of spec work that you do, great, do it. But make sure that number six is still followed. And that is make sure it's related to what it is that you want to do, which means you kind of have to figure out what it is that you want to do and go for before you do any of this stuff. This is what we started off our day talking about. Now, if you can, consider showcasing some behind the scenes elements. Now, along with spec work, it is hugely valuable to wherever possible show your work in progress and or the journey you went through to realize the outcome of any given brief or project. It could be the journey from creating a logo mark to implementing it within a branding project. It could be a craft-based process, where you're literally cutting things out of, cardboard or construction paper. It could be how you've marked up an annual report or a marketing strategy, or you've got a whole bunch of scribbles on a cocktail napkin written in mascara. It is hugely, hugely important because showing things going on behind the scenes can give the people who are looking at your work an almost instant understanding to how it was made, and as well as the depth and level of your capabilities and capacities as the person creating the work. You know, unlike showing, your work in a math lesson, for example, demonstrating your technique and your craft and the science behind it can be hugely beneficial because it the end results might not be something that the client is looking for, but they actually now know that you are equipped with the skill set that they are looking for. And it is a very, very fine line between hiring a portfolio and hiring a skill set. The kind of jobs that you want to get, the people who are doing the hiring, the people who are making those decisions, they realize that they're not actually hiring a portfolio. They're hiring a person. If that person understands how to do something, it can certainly offset any issues with number six. If you don't have exclusively all of the finished products that they're looking for, it might just be enough to give someone a glimpse into your process. And I can tell you with 100% degree of certainty, at least with me, I have hired many people to be part of my team that I didn't like their work, but I liked and understood how they got from point A to point B. The deliverables and the specific skill sets can always be taught in the right situation to people. But that thought process is really what I'm the most interested in. And most people who work in the creative field feel the same way. And I think, the two final things that I wanted to introduce to you for consideration is that you need to really choose the right format. And this is something that isn't going to make any sense to you until we talk about how these things are made in the modern context. This is the real drawback of not having this all in one day, but split over 2 days. Um, when you're building all of this stuff out and you're thinking about what your portfolio might look like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to have something completely avant-garde that needs an instruction manual on how to even look through your portfolio to be considered successful. You just need to make it functional and have some semblance of creativity and form. I want to get to your site. I want to know about you. I want to be interested and excited, and I want to be able to get to look at your work. And I do not want to have to figure out how to do that. If I've if you've designed something that has perhaps some weird or obscure way of navigating your website, or perhaps things are in a sort of unconventional order of being presented, or things that are scrolling sideways as opposed to up and down, you've lost me before I even get to take a look at what you're doing. That's not a good look. You don't have to make something completely new to this world in order to be successful. And I think lastly, the one thing that you will see in many of these portfolios that we're looking at is various degrees of success in the ability to be confident and tell your story. I think the key to any sort of campaign that you're going to make with all of this is the ability for you to deliver and talk confidently about the work that is contained within it. You can't just create something that is backstopped by just what something looks like. You're going to have to be able to talk about, defend, and of course, be confident in telling your story. It needs to match up. And there's absolutely nothing worse, my friends, at all in this game that we're playing than going through a portfolio that has very little or nothing to say about a person's work, about their goals, about their direction. The pieces that you include, the things that you're talking about, the processes that you're showing are the ones that you should be proud of, ones that you can talk about, ones that you can defend enthusiastically, that explain your backstory, explain your journey, and help you move forward to facilitating your goals. So in the end, which direction is right for you? Well, as we've talked about already, after you've identified your passions and strengths and explored potential niches and industries and goals that align with your personal style and lifestyle choices, you're going to have a way better idea of who you are. You're going to have a better idea about knowing about yourself. But there's additional levels to this. In defining the impact that you want to make with this, and the real you of who you are, you might gravitate towards sectors that maybe resonate with your values or resonate with your interests or resonate with your passions. Maybe it's thinking outside the box with all of this and it's not big corporate. Maybe it's not for profits. Maybe it's environmental organizations, companies aligned with social or political causes. A lot of people just look for the glitz and glamour and say, I want to work for Apple or I want to work for, Meta or something like that. You know, you might want to consider thinking about a focus where you can contribute to the whole thing in some positive way, in addition to facilitating your goals and your dreams. And that means you have to be open to being adaptable and flexible and consider all possible options. You have to keep an eye on emerging technologies and trends. You have to use them to stay relevant and versatile. And I mean, what that means is arguably, and this is a can of worms that I'm very hesitant to open in the short period of time that we have together, if you're not using large language models to help you figure out ideas and work out copy and bounce, you know, potential directions and considerations around, you're already way behind the curve, right? There's a big difference between AI and large language models. They are often misconstrued as being the exact same thing, and they're nowhere even the same thing. Emergent technologies are what are going to help you further define and obtain your goals. It should be something that you really, really lean into. because this is a roadmap that reflects your growth and expertise. It cannot be taken lightly if you want to do this properly. Everything costs a lot of money in today's day and age. I shouldn't have to explain that to you. Although we have a tremendous opportunity available to us, it is still a competitive job market. And that is because anybody anywhere in the world can do what we do. But if you're able to communicate your capabilities to potential clients and employers, and it jives with what it is that you want to do, you're really, really leaning into all of the things that are going to promote a successful campaign and whatever it is that you are choosing to, go forward into. But in the end, choice is up to you as to what that looks like, what it focuses on. The only thing I can really tell you is to be true to yourself. And if you have to be true to yourself, it means you have to really question what that means. Otherwise, it just ends up being a collection of shit on a website that isn't going to help you out. Showcase your best work. Take pride in it. No one is ever going to take away all the blood, sweat, and tears and equity that you've put into developing your career, even if it doesn't land on its feet in the first attempt. The final results of all of this are almost always fluid. Nothing lasts forever. And hopefully, this is perhaps your first portfolio. It certainly will not be your last portfolio. And to be honest with you, it might not even be your first job, but it certainly won't be your last job either. Okay, so when we start to look at these sites, which we're going to do now, maybe have a couple questions in your mind that you might be able to answer if you don't already have them. Ask yourself a few things. What are your goals? What do you want to do with all of this? What does it look like? What kind of lifestyle do you want to live, facilitated by the direction that you want to go? What are your strengths as a creative in your respective discipline? What do you enjoy doing? And the opposite, what don't you like doing? What do you absolutely hate doing? What are your weaknesses? Who is it that you ideally want to work with or for? If I asked you to define what your dream gig actually looks like, would you be able to tell me? Who is it that you're catering to? Who is it that you want to cater to? And of course, when do you need this to happen? Is it right now? Is it last week? Is it 6 months from now? Are you starting to budget things accordingly, including your time? Well, these are things that you need to be able to answer in order to be able to get this done. So let's take a look at some fun stuff. I'm going to share a few links in the chat, and I'd love to look at these and discuss some highs and lows and some commonalities of these with you. Give me one sec as I punch these into the chat for us to take a look at. And I might have one more in my back pocket depending on how much time we have left. But I did want to spend, the rest of our class today looking at these. Just to confirm, those came through the chat okay, right? You got those links in the chat? Yeah, thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, the first one I want to look at with you, and again, these are from a cross section of different, practices and businesses. The first one I want to look at with you is one of the portfolios that I share with literally every single class that I teach. And it is not necessarily the most intriguing one, not necessarily relevant to your practice, but it has a lot of amazing things about it and a lot of things that are worthwhile considering for incorporation into yours. And this is the portfolio of Paul Vonnick's site. Now, Paul is a logo designer from Amsterdam, and he is quickly becoming one of the more recognizable hand-drawn logo creators in Europe. And he has done some truly, truly amazing work. And as far as the quality of the work that he does, it's amazing. But what I love about Paul's portfolio is a few things. And we can just look at this in the general sense, is that when I get to his portfolio, he has a very, clear personal brand created. Paul von Excite. This is a typeface that he designed. Okay. Number two, it very clearly says what he does. There's no guessing at what it is that I'm looking at when I get to his portfolio. He's a professional logo designer from Amsterdam with 10 years plus of experience in type and lettering, working with clients from all over the world. Now, this reads as evidence. It is not an assertive statement. It is not an elevator pitch, nor is he asking you to do anything, which is where it falls a little short, in my opinion. But it clarifies who he is and what you're looking at right away, which is very, very smartly done. You can never make the assumption that people know what they're looking at, even if they purposely found you. Okay. The other thing I like is how simple and clean the navigation is. I don't have to look for it. I don't have to figure out how it functions. The 5 different sections of his website are all there. What I really like is he gets right to it. It's the number one principle of songwriting, right? Don't bore us, get to the chorus. The faster you get to the good stuff, the better it is. Well, when I get to his website, I'm greeted by all of these different things that he's designed. Okay, we've got some static images, we've got some movement, we've got some animations, we've got some photography, we've got a whole mishmash of stuff to look at. This is fantastic. It's eye candy, keeps me interested, backstops what he's saying. Now, let's take a look at any project. It doesn't matter which one you click. We can look at, let's say, look at Malbon, for example. Malbon is the number one most expensive premium luxury golf brand in the world by an order of magnitude. And how he presents his work is incredibly simple. It is literally mentioning who the client is or what the idea is. Again, doesn't have to be real work for our case. A little bit of an introduction as to what you're looking at, and then some smattering of backstop of the imagery related to it. Now, again, keep in mind Paul is a logo designer. He's not doesn't work in marketing, he doesn't do advertising. So it's incredibly basic what you're looking at. But that's not the point I'm trying to make when you're looking at this presentation. Okay? The name of the business, the name of the idea, a write-up about it gets right to the work. Now, go back to this landing page and look at a different project. It doesn't matter which project you look at. Whatever project you open up next, it's the exact same format. It is instantly created a sense of familiarity that means you don't need an instruction manual to figure out where everything is. I'm looking at the Marvel app logo, which is one of my favorite pieces that he's designed. Same thing, name of the project, a blurb about it, a list of images and examples of his work. Well, if you were to look through his entire portfolio of work, what you'll find out is every single one of these pages is the exact same layout, which is a really interesting thought process because if you actually understand what that means, it means that this isn't a design of a website that has 55 or 60 different page layouts on it. It's actually the bulk of it, the landing page and the detail views of the projects or the case studies, it's only 2 pages. That project layout page is created, templated, and from an administration point of view of how you assemble your website, it's just duplicated over and over and over again. And the content has changed. This allows anybody who looks at Paul's site to have the same experience from project to project. It's brilliant. It's simple. It focuses on the work as opposed to reinventing the wheel. This is about 1,000 checkboxes in the right direction. But I want to draw your attention to one specific project, and this is the Design Modo project. I'm going to paste this into the chat here. This is the Design Modo project. Take a look at this. And I'm also going to paste the link in the middle of his project, which is a link to the site Medium, which is really Design Modo's only competition. Design Modo is probably the world's foremost platform website related to web design and graphic design, but Paul redesigned their logo and he's showing it off to you. But what he's also has here is a case study that walks you through the behind the scenes work for developing this idea. And this is hugely important because again, you might not like Paul's work, but you might have the need for a hand-drawn logo or piece of identity. Well, in this case study, Paul is walking you through, Paul and Medium are walking you through how he got from beginning to end in the project. So you're seeing sort of the before and after of the two finished products, and he's walking you through his process. In design circles and corporate identity design, you always have to start off with a sketch. You can't start out at a blank page. So he's showing you his initial pencil sketch. It's not even that accurate or great, really. It's just an idea that he sketched out. He's developing the concept. And then he's talking about something very smart. He's talking about maybe making some interesting, unique element in and distinctive character for this new design. So he's, brainstorming. These are pencil sketches of how he could possibly treat the letter G. And again, think of this as an example of what we're talking about. Well, he's showing off some examples, and then he's coming up with, a sort of second phase pencil sketch, and he's satisfied with the look, and then walking you through the process that he has to take from his second, sort of take at it to thickening up the letters, to giving them some weight with his sketching, filling them in with color, and then he's showing you something interesting is that this outline is now scanned and brought into his computer system where he's tracing it inside of a graphic design piece of graphic design software. In this case, he's tracing it in Illustrator, and he's showing you the trace of his pencil sketch, which is cleaned up a little bit, and his first sort of real digital draft of it. Well, but he goes even further, and he's basically saying that they were happy with it, but they wanted to change, like micro adjust and make some revisions to a few things. The letters felt too heavy, so he wanted to adjust the width and weight of them. And that's what they're talking about here. And then he comes up with another concept, which I find very, very interesting because he's literally audited his work at this point. So he's shown you a sort of faded, sort of transparent version of his work, but he circled the areas that he's still not necessarily happy with or that his client isn't happy with. And he's made note of reasons why this isn't 100% in the 100th percentile of what he wants to do yet. This is very critical design thinking for, in this case, a logo designer. And then he's showing you that after all of those revisions were made, what the end result was, and then showing you the finished product alongside of some iconic and alternate versions, and then, of course, showing you the final result. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is that even though it might not necessarily be relevant to your specific discipline, there is a difference between showing you this and a little bit of a blurb as to what it is that you did and walking you through all of this. And the difference is that if I was Design Modo and Paul sent me the bill for this, I would probably expect this to be, relatively speaking, in the 50 to $60,000 range to do something like this. If he sent me this, I'd be expecting a bill for 2,500. Letting you into the process of how something is done not only gives people who are interested in your work a sense that you're capable of doing it, but it also potentially puts you in a completely different price bracket for your services. I don't necessarily love this, but what I absolutely love is that he's doing it the right way. And when he sends me a bill and says, "Hey man, it's 50 grand," I know that for every single one of the designs that he did, and this is just one that he's showing you to end up at the finished product, not probably the 10 or 15 that he had to do, I'd be like, okay, I get it. This probably took you 3 or 4, 500 hours of your time to do. This probably took you the better part of 3 months to get it this far, with all of the different levels of communication and back and forth and review and revision rounds. That's the difference between a $2,500 logo, which still sounds super expensive, and what it's really worth, which is probably around $50,000. I wouldn't even blink if that's the bill that Paul sent me, because I know he goes through this process. This is the value of showcasing behind the scenes elements. Now, what Paul doesn't have is he doesn't really have a great call to action. And that's probably because he's busy enough. And I get it. That makes sense for someone who's already established. You're not asking them to do anything. You're going on reputation alone, especially if Malbon and Marvel and Design Moto are your clients. You probably don't need a huge call to action, but it doesn't hurt to have it. He's got a decent about page where, he's elaborating a little bit. He's got some of his back catalog of work that he can show you. He's got a blog that he's included. He's got some FAQs to answer, how much does this cost? What's the time frame? Uh, you know, Commonly asked questions. This is a great way to sort of pre-qualify some of, your interview questions or your client's questions that you might have. But what he doesn't have is he doesn't have a contact form. He has no way to reach out to them other than him publicly putting his email address in his LinkedIn profile. He's buried his social media links at the bottom of his website. Yeah, I think he's leaving a lot of opportunity on the table here. Wouldn't be necessarily how I would want to go about doing it. But there's a lot of great things that you can take from this. Okay. Let's take a look at another one here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over Eduardo's for now and take a look at Adrian Gervais's portfolio. So let's take a look at this one, Adrian Gervais. Adrian's portfolio, fundamentally, from a content perspective, is exactly the same as Paul's. It just looks different. We got something interesting that sort of quantifies what Adrian does. Adrian is a freelance designer who specializes in SaaS products and websites. So SaaS is a fancy acronym for software as a service. So that could be things like Uber, DoorDash, Amazon. Those are examples of software as a service. Notion, Trello, Basecamp, software as a service. He designs what these things look like. And it's much more visually interesting, but fundamentally, it looks the same. When you scroll down, he's got some interesting sort of animated things that are scrolling across the page, examples of his work. It's pretty abstract. You don't really know what it is, but it's visually interesting. He's taking care of the visual part right away and sort of establish the fact that maybe you're looking at a lab, maybe he's a mad scientist, he's generating intrigue. It's fascinating. But as we scroll down, what he does better than Paul is detail exactly what he does. And I really, really like this approach. I like the approach that he's sort of leaned into this mad scientist laboratory thing. He's calling his services procedures, available procedures. And this is much more of a blended sort of mission statement and value proposition and elevator pitch than the previous portfolio we looked at. He's telling you what he does, but he's also explaining the value proposition that Adrian is bringing to the table. And he's giving you a list of things that he is able to do on top of the design things, the market research, uh, design kits, UI kits, documentations, pitch decks. This is a lot more marketing related than it is UI UX related, which is what he does. But he's telling you he also does a whole bunch of different things. What I particularly love about Adrian's approach here is once you get to the project section, as you scroll down, he's calling this section projects under the microscope. But really, what it is, if you look to the right, this is a case study approach. This case study approach, arguably, is the absolute best way for any of you, including myself, to present work in their portfolio, especially if we are starting from scratch with it. And what I mean by a case study approach, and we're going to break this down into how to actually figure that out and rationalize what could go where, essentially is, you know, essentially a two-column spreadsheet. So on one column is everything that you know that you can do, and on the other column is all of the things, companies, industries, people, places, things that you can do them for. And as long as that roster of things that you do is stepped and repeated across a whole series of spec work, you're demonstrating your ability to produce said work across a number of different ideas, businesses, people, specific industries, et cetera, et cetera. This is the case study approach. This is how you backstop the work that you do to get into the industry that you want to get into. And it works because once you're working, it might start cross-pollinating across a number of different things that you're doing, and it might not solely be focused on one thing anymore. Hami, where are you? I see you have a hand up.
Hello.
Hey,
I would like to ask you to clarify about case studies.
yeah.
For example, if I would like to build my portfolio and I haven't had any local experience in Winnipeg, so I
Mhm.
can choose one of the local business and I can base on that case study to give more idea about my plan or my strategies. That's either mini project of my own or anything like that's
Yeah, so the answer is yes. Um, the idea behind, like, again, if we're gonna backtrack a bit, that's absolutely cool to have this conversation. If you don't have work that's going into your portfolio, the question should be, what is going into your portfolio? Well, the answer is you're going to have to make everything up. That is what spec work is. If you're going to make up work based off of what it is that you want to do, the best way to approach doing it is to come up with that list. And again, if we had an entire day together, it would be the very next thing that we're talking about. But essentially, you could say, Hami, that if you, let's just take the example of a graphic designer because it's just easy to explain very quickly. If you're a graphic designer and you produce a logo, um, let's say a logo, packaging, social media advertising, and print advertising, and a website. Those are five things that you can actually make. Well, okay, great. That's what you want to do. You want to be a web designer or a graphic designer. Well, who do you want to produce them for? What industry do you want to work in? If you said to me, I want to focus on local small to medium businesses in the Winnipeg area, I would say, great. I love that idea. Well, what are you interested in? Are you interested in sports? Are you interested in food? Are you interested in fashion or healthcare? Okay, well, let's take the idea of healthcare, for example, or healthcare related things. I'd say to you, okay, well, what about healthcare or wellness or healthcare adjacent do you could you foresee yourself working in? What does that look like? Well, you could say, I I'm interested in natural medicines. I'm interested in yoga. I'm interested in osteopathy. Maybe I'm interested in cannabis, a huge industry. It could be spas. So there's five different ideas, five different people who could use your services. Then you would come up with an idea for a real business or a business or an idea that you make up yourself. That is the spec part of spec work. And you could produce those five different deliverables that you say you want to produce for all of the ideas related to the industries that you want to make progress into working with or for. Then all of a sudden, you're taking this case study approach that is a set of deliverables or a set of content that you're producing for a specific purpose, targeted to a specific industry that shows off a specific set of skills designed to facilitate your goals of working as a designer in the healthcare industry. Does that make a little bit more sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. So this case study approach, again, all you're doing is you're stepping and repeating what it is that you want to do. And there's fundamentally no difference between what you're looking at from a content and a structure of a website point of view between Paul's website and Adrian's website. If I click on any project, if I click on My Skill Camp, for example, one of my favorite projects of Adrian's is you get to the detailed view of the project. He's talking about, what it is that you're looking at, a little bit of an introduction, discusses the scope of the work, presents an image of the work that is designed to get your attention very fast, and then walks you through what he's done. What I like about his approach more so than Paul's is he's calling it what it is. What was the challenge with this piece of work? What did the things that I produced aim to solve? This is really leaning into that value, establishing value that you're bringing to the table. And even if you're making it up, it's going to be way better when you're making it up because you're the one who's making all the decisions. You can purposely craft an entire narrative around your skill set and around the direction that you want to go, and not the other way around. So he's given you some information, he's presented his timeline, he's showing you the goals, and in this case, he's showing you, what a good UI UX designer focuses on, which is, wireframes and procedural drawings to give you an idea of what the project is about. Content is irrelevant. Replace this with whatever it is that you're doing, and the output and weight of it is the same. He's explaining what you're looking at. He's explaining what he's done. He's explaining the problem and showing you the solutions and showing you the work. He's showing you behind the scenes, the work in progress. He's showing you the finished product. And even if this doesn't make any sense to you, what it is you're looking at, that's fine because you're not a UI UX designer. Replace this with what you do, this approach with what you do. This is an absolutely brilliant way to present your work. It is a great example. Now, like Paul's site, It doesn't matter which project you look at. Each of these secondary pages that you're looking at are exactly the same layout. The only thing that has changed is what those images are, what the wording is, what the project is about. So again, even though this website looks incredibly complicated to make, fundamentally, it's only 2 pages. It's the landing page that you're getting to, and it's the secondary page structure where the projects are, and maybe a few other small things that are worth mentioning. But from a compositional point of view, this is not a complex website. It just looks great. So we have one that looks very basic and one that looks very complicated. Both are choosing to focus on the work and not themselves as the product, but you end up with an almost identical structure and execution of a website, with the difference being the work. Now, if you go back to the landing page of Adrian's site, the very first page, there's a few things on here that I want to draw your attention to that I think are brilliant that Paul doesn't do. Okay. Now I want you to start on the landing page and start scrolling down a little bit. And if you haven't noticed already, there's this purple block pinned to the top of the page. And it hasn't moved. No matter where you scroll, it stays in the same spot. And all it says is, hey, I'm Adrian. And a link to his email address. And when you're at the very top of the page, it says, hey, I'm Adrian. I'm available for freelance. Now, this is a very minimalist approach to a call to action. He's telling you what he wants you to get from looking at this. Yes, this is his portfolio. Yes, he's got his contact information and socials up front, which is where they should be. But he's also subconsciously making the registration in your head that, hey, I'm available for work. I'm open to opportunities. And when you scroll down, that block is pinned to the top of his website. Now that is not complicated to do. Even if you're not a programmer, you can make this happen, something like this, relatively easily. But it's the thought process that I like. As you scroll down, something that you can budget for in the future is maybe a list of your recent collaborations, who else you've worked with, maybe even some testimonials if you are choosing to go the route of being an entrepreneur. Yes, Yukti, it also opens up, it's a link to his email address to send an email if you click on it as well. But what I really, really like is once you get towards the bottom of his website. And this is sort of the middle ground between the two or the 3 portfolios that I'm going to show you today. Is with Paul's, it wasn't about Paul. It was about his work with a very basic layout. With Adrian's, it's a lot more stylized. Still fundamentally the exact same structure, but very, very stylized. And when you get to the bottom, he actually introduces himself. I think this is a missed opportunity. I think this should have been way higher on, way more prominent, because if he's billing himself as a freelancer looking for work, I'm just as much interested in you as your work. So when he talks about who he is and what he's interested in doing, he takes a very similar approach to Paul, but he's also included a picture of himself. He still has some FAQs that you can click in a drop-down menu, but it's very much more slickly put together. It's really smart. As you continue to go down, what I really like is that he has a area to subscribe to a newsletter. Now I know what you're thinking. Do I have to write a newsletter? No, it's not the point. The point is that it signifies a number of things. One, it signifies that, hey, you're interested in two-way communication with people who are looking at your work. And 2, it allows you to collect people's data, email addresses, if they happen to be interested in what they're looking at. Paul gave you no provision to do that. The only way to get a hold of him was to click on his email address, which takes you off of the website. We don't want to leave the portfolio. We want to stay on here as long as we can. So when there's something worth up sharing, you'll be the first to know. No spam, that's a promise. If you're interested, he's really leaning into the branding idea of him being that mad scientist. Let's sign up to the lab reports, a newsletter subscription. This is something that is incredibly simple and straightforward to put together in the modern context of building a website, even if you don't have any programming knowledge. And when you get to the bottom, and this is pinned on every page, by the way, he has a, a well-designed sort of footer where it has his contact information, yes. And there's something that's starting to form in terms of a call to action. It's not really that great, but he does it in a very subliminal way, which I think is very, very smart. Are you interested? Let's talk. Well, that itself isn't compelling, but what he's doing is with that arrow pointing to the right at his contact information, that is a principle of classical graphic design theory where if you put an arrow pointing somewhere on something, your eyes are going to naturally follow that progression. So he's saying, listen, if you are interested, let's talk. Not a great call to action, but here's what he wants you to do. Better, not great. Same basic premise. Landing page, interesting, something to get your attention. Could be a masthead or what is known as a hero or a champion comp, a composition of images or something that is designed to get you interested right away. Paul's did not have that. Adrian's does have that. Followed by either an explanation as to what it is that you do, your value prop, your elevator pitch, followed by access to your portfolio. And fundamentally, this is the exact same execution as Paul's, but it just looks different. It looks better. You click on a project, and no matter which project you go to, that format is the same. So your secondary page structure is the same for every secondary page. I like. One of my favorite portfolios. But I think what I want to do is I want to end our first session with something completely opposite to all of these. These are arguably design related portfolios. I mean, not arguably, they are graphic designers' portfolios. Well, I have a friend of mine who I went to high school with, and this is her website. This is my friend Tracy. And essentially, Tracy is a solo entrepreneur who worked for a long time in corporate communications, who decided to go out on her own. And I thought it was a great idea. And when I heard that she went out on her own, I paid very, very close attention to how she decided to roll out her portfolio. And this is fairly recent. This is within the last couple of years that she's done this. What is interesting to me about this is that there's a huge dichotomy in how Paul and Adrian presented their work versus Tracy presenting her work. And what I love about Tracy's presentation is that it doesn't really matter what work she shows you because she understands that it's her that you're buying. And I don't mean that in any derogatory way. She's the product. She's the one who's doing your marketing, your copywriting, your website development, your email marketing. So instead of showing off her work, she's showing off herself. Takes a page right out of my own playbook. I love it. And when we get to her site, it's a relatively straightforward site, but what she does very, very well is introduce who she is. This is the interesting image, the elevator pitch, and she continues to keep your attention. Okay. And I really love the fact that, predominantly she focuses on being a female-led company dealing with female-led projects. And she comes right out and says it. She has a call to action right away, and it's not super slick, but it's prompting you to say, oh, okay, well, I can talk to her about what she's doing for free. Okay, great. Then she tells you about her process. She starts with her story, then moves to your website, then deals with your email marketing, and provides a very, I guess, image appropriate, softer, more feminine, but very, very professional approach to talking about what she does. Okay, she's not showing you any of her work right here. She's letting the services and her own values play into this. She does copywriting, template design, email marketing. She's followed up with some um, testimonials. She talks about how she uses low tech or no tech solutions and explains how this works. She has an area to learn more about who she is, where she came from. She's creating the case that her backstory is arguably worth more than any work she could show you. And it's a very interesting, completely opposite approach of what Paul and Adrian have done. Now, there's absolutely some work that's on her website for sure, but she gives a lot back to the community. She has pulled all of their lessons from working in corporate communications and translated them into creating a demand for herself. And Asena, that's not the first time I've seen a cat jump on somebody in the classroom. That's amazing. I actually once had a cat walk across someone's keyboard, and it was like that scene from a movie where it's like random characters that just showed up on my screen. But she gives something away here. Okay, so super easy website fixes. She's got some goodies that she can gives you, and she's focused really on herself. I found this really, really fascinating. And I think that you ultimately have a choice to consider. This is a much more straightforward and basic website. There's not really much to it. There's certainly, an about page and a list of the services, and she's has some great photography of her clients and herself. None of this is stock photography. She's explaining to you what she does very, very well, far better than Adrian and Paul von Excite, and relying on the fact that this looks really good and is very well written and has a very compelling backstory to offset the fact that she doesn't have a ton of work in her portfolio. She's definitely got stuff in here, but it's buried. It's like a buried lead, right? It's a really interesting approach that runs completely counterintuitive to the other two that I've shown you. This is again, a very simple template based website that, you know, is not challenging to make. It has a little bit more of a complex page structure and architecture to it, but nothing is out of is extremely difficult to create in any of this stuff. It's very content driven versus portfolio driven. Now, what I particularly like as well about Tracy's approach, other than the fact that she's made it about herself and not her work, is that if I want to contact her, she's made it a very personable sort of experience. There's a few different touch points for calls to action, but what she has on her contact page is literally asking you a question. This is what I mean by a call to action. Is there something that I can help you with? I'd love the chance to chat and hear what's on your mind. Online marketing help, copywriting, website, drop me a line. Here's her contact information. But hey, if you don't want to contact her, look what she has that both of the other examples didn't have. A very basic form to fill out. your name, email address, subject matter. What are you interested in? How did you hear about me? Could even be, what time of day do you want me to get back to you? This is a really, really good attempt at doing what most creatives don't lean into as much as they should, making it about you. Now, yes, if you were to translate this into job seeking, what it looks like totally plays out. What it says totally plays out. It might need to be tweaked as opposed to what, doing this for other business owners to just say, this is what I do, swap the order of operations and put your portfolio up front. But fundamentally, this is a wonderful approach. You almost feel like, you know, her. Whereas, Paul's and Adrian's, it comes off as being very impersonal. So some interesting stuff to take a look at on our first day, and I've got a few more that I will show you in our conversation next week as well. And really, what we need to focus on next session is I do want to show you one or two of my former students' portfolios because they are sort of somewhere in between these two radically different examples. And some of them are job seeking portfolios. But I also want to figure out the question that's being asked about three different ways today. And I apologize that this is not happening in one contiguous conversation like it used to in the previous several semesters that I've taught this. But we have to split it up over 2 days simply from the department scheduling. Getting all of this out of your head is going to ensure that all the stuff that we're talking about that doesn't make sense to you right now makes sense. And the only reason spec work and translating it to a set of goals and executing it into a portfolio doesn't make sense to you right now is because it's in your head and not sitting on paper in front of you. If we can figure out a way to very quickly and easily get that out of our head and also figure out what we might need to do to be able to create this work, get it into production, figure out how long it's going to take us to do it, be able to track our progress on it, well, we can then start to move forward into actually producing these things. And once we're able to do that, it's simply just a matter of figuring out where you want to build this and how to go through all of those associated processes. So at the beginning of our session next week, pardon me, at the same time, we got lots more to talk about. And I hope that I'm able to answer any additional questions or comments that you may have. So for now, I guess it's what, 4 o'clock Winnipeg time. It's time for an afternoon nap, maybe? Yeah. It's not my first rodeo, my friends. Listen, it was a pleasure meeting you virtually today. I've got everyone's attendance logged. I hope that you enjoyed your afternoon. We're off to a good start, and I can't wait to continue next week. Hope you have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you then. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and thanks kindly for your time today.
Thank you. Have a
You're
good
very
one. Bye-bye.
welcome. You're very
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
so
Jeremy.
much.
Have a great
Thank you.
week.
Bye-bye.
You
Have a
too,
great week.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Jeremy.
You're welcome, Happy. If you really want to know,
Of course.
so I used to work in film and television as well as being a touring musician, and my name doesn't sound very TV or rock and roll. right? So, so
So that's your artistic name?
well, yeah, it's real. Is that I'm Jewish. My Hebrew name is Jacob Israel. So my Hebrew name translated into English is Jake Israel, which sounds a hell of a lot more rock and roll than Jeremy Slavin. So actually, most people in the business don't even know my real name. The only people who know my real name are my parents and most of my students, but most people call me Jake.
Wow, nice. Well, thank you for the trust. And
Of
yeah,
course.
we had a teacher just courses before that is a very good writer, and she was Whitaker, Wichika.
Hmm.
She was trying to change her last name because of she was getting into the scene, so her last name was not that memorable, she
Right.
said, and she was trying to change that, and was trying to talk her against that.
Well, listen, I mean, creatives are, uh,
Creative.
well, I mean, we're also extremely insecure and we're vain and narcissistic at the same time. I would rather sound cool than look cool. So that's why I go by Jake, but it's not made up. It's actually it's a real thing. So,
A real thing.
hmm.
No, it's good.
Hmm.
Well, thank you. Good to know. I don't think you're narcissistic, by the way. But
Thank you. I try not to be. Jake is the narcissistic one. Jeremy
yeah,
is the professor type.
well, you're right up my alley. I'm
Perfect.
every time that I present myself, I'm quiet, shy and quiet,
Hmm.
and everyone laughs. And I have not even been like 5 minutes in the group, so
That's awesome. That's
they're
awesome.
talking.
That's a good trait to have for sure.
Oh, that's a
Awesome.
good thing about not being like having double personalities. So there,
I think we all do, whether we want to admit it or not. I
somehow, yes.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
just
definitely.
listen, it it's a good way to reinvent yourself if you have to, right? It's not a bad thing. It's,
Well, I think it's a survival thing. I
yes.
I back in Mexico, I used to work in a public relations
Hmm.
agency. So I
Cool.
learned how to be like the public face, and everything that
Right.
you talk about just makes sense because I had to build my own myself like brand to be in front of the clients and
Yep.
address them and take them to the events and organize the events. And but then I'm like my private self, and I'm actually silence loving, quiet. i
Me
i
too.
have I took them
Don't t-
partying so
don't
much
tell
that
anybody.
exactly, I know. But they
Yeah.
now I mention it, that they actually think that I'm playing, and no, it's not a construct. I'm not being a hypocrite. It's just that
No,
I know.
it helps you flip the switch
Oh,
to become that,
yeah,
whether it's like a creative person or, put on your professional face. Like
yeah,
sometimes I have to try to physically separate the two, right? Because
right.
I would never act this way to, people that I know, but when you're dealing with, someone who works in advertising or is a guitar player in a rock band, they expect you to
Exactly.
be like this,
Especially when you're working with
untouchable
celebrities.
badass, right? But
Right. Especially
yeah,
when you work with celebrities or renowned people or
yes,
CEOs, or in my case, CEOs or
yeah,
marketing managers from
for sure.
Latin America. I think that you have to like create this persona that is not away from you. It's just the enhanced characteristics that you need,
Exactly. Exactly.
and not think that and well, right now, like, to be laughable, I work at the Fairmont Hotel here in Winnipeg, so I'm actually doing the check-ins and check-outs at front
Cool.
desk.
Oh, so you have to be likable and funny
Yes,
with
and I
people
have
as
to
they come
present
in.
the face, and I just about this theme. I just last 2 days ago had like 200 people arriving.
Right.
I was exhausted. I didn't have the energy anymore. I really I
Yeah.
exhausted my social battery,
Yeah.
and my husband laughed at me and he said like, how can you? You're so social. I'm not.
Yeah.
You not know me. It's not.
It's so weird that that is often something that you see a lot in our line of work, right? Like creative
Yeah.
people can uh rationalize a lot of different ways to become the person that people sort of expect them to be, right?
Yeah.
And you know, when I flip that switch, it's, you know, admittedly, it's typically to make money, right? I mean,
Yes, and
it's not,
usually my experience, really creative people are actually more on the quiet. You create in silence. Well, like in
yeah,
silence in your mind. Like maybe you have music, maybe
yeah,
you
no,
have
you're right.
stuff, but you create yourself. You do not create. You have the ideas getting in touch with others, but you create alone.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
think that's a common trait with creative types for sure.
yeah, definitely. Well, Jake, thank you so much for your
It's my
rockstar speech,
pleasure. My
and
pleasure.
looking
Thank
forward to the
you.
next class.
Yeah, likewise. Likewise. I'm glad. I'm glad you had a nice day and enjoyed, and you're getting
Yeah.
something from it. That's awesome to hear.
Oh,
Appreciate that.
definitely. I also did a lot of other things. I promise I listened.
Oh, no, hey, I get
No,
it. I get it. You don't have to explain,
no,
you
no,
know.
thank you. We're talking about creating. I painted and I knitted, so
Oh,
I
awesome. Very
creative.
cool. Very cool.
Thank you
So
so
that's
much.
great. You're very
Well,
welcome.
take care.
Okay, you too, Mappy.
Bye.
Ciao.